Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we have another very special interview for you. He's a three-time fourth place finisher in shot put at the WIAA state track meet, a three-time state wrestling championship finisher, 2/4, 1/3, a two-time team state wrestling champion, a two-time All-American in the weight throw and shot put, and also a two-time UW Superior Mert Mortarelli Male Athlete of the Year. From Collegiate, Wisconsin, CJ Pillath.
There goes that man's jock strap.
Oh my God, did you see that?
America's team? Yeah, right.
Oh, baby, it's a big day in sports.
There's nothing like battling it out with your teammates all season long to go win a championship.
Green Bay's got it this year.
Huge move for them. I think it's going to be a game changer.
We have a lot to talk about this busy week in the sports world. Welcome to the In a League of Their Own podcast.
How's it going, man?
Not too bad. How are you?
Just fantastic. Glad to have you on here. I know we had your brother on last week, so it was only right to have you on. That
Sure.
Pillath athletic blood runs deep. So, just kicking things off here. For those who don't know who you are, give us a little background where you're from, and we'll just kind of start with that.
Sure. So my name's Christian Pillath. Most people call me CJ. For those that don't know, I actually graduated high school in the same grade as Collin. Believe it or not, we did basically all three sports together, football, wrestling, and track. I went on to compete at UW Superior in track and field, where I know you mentioned a few various things. I was actually a two-time Mert Mortarelli. Forget Italians, right?
Oh.
Which again is the male athlete of the year, all sports, 3WS. I have a list in front of me here, but we can get into those later. Two-time All-American, weight throw, shot put. And for those that don't know, we'll probably talk about this in a while too. Weight throw, basically a 35-pound kettlebell. Spin in a circle as fast as you can and just let it go.
Yeah. So obviously at the collegiate level, track is kind of where you went. So rewind all the way back to when you were little in fourth grade, just moved to Coleman and you had the same mustache that you do today. Kind of go back to, I guess, the early stages of athletics, even though going to the small school that Coleman was, kind of where athletics started for you.
Sure. So, elementary school, my brother Josh and I, we went to Oconto Falls, where basically I just wrestled from kindergarten up till third grade is the last year I was at Oconto Falls. I won one match in second grade to Brandon Champagne. Sorry. And my second win was in fourth grade. I think my third win was maybe sixth grade in wrestling. And then my first winning season was in eighth grade. So success for me didn't necessarily start early. It was definitely a progression of a lot of losing, but just continually going out there and just giving my best. Again, fourth grade, Mr. Sweat, we had the track meet. I don't think I threw shot put very far in that. I think Morgan Malecki beat me.
Those of you listening, Morgan is a unisex name, but in this case, it was a girl.
Yeah, it was sixth grade is when we were allowed to do track. I don't know if you did track in sixth grade or if you waited till seventh.
Yeah, it was seventh that I started.
Yeah. And for some reason, shot put by that time, I picked up on it. I was throwing 40 feet already in sixth grade with the 8-pound shot put. I was winning most of the meets. And, I just fell in love with the sport. I don't know if I was an influence on you coming out. I know you were talking about doing golf for a while, and we actually talked about maybe doing both at one point, just for the free golf. But yeah,
so like I remember early on, you were just kind of you're definitely the standout. Obviously, one of the bigger kids at the middle school level. Both of us kind of actually, which ended up playing to our disbenefit in high school, giving our size what we did and playing on the football field. Looking back on it and talking with your brother last week, just with how we weren't probably utilized the correct way on the football field. But but yeah, so middle school level, that's kind of where track started. What about wrestling? Coleman wrestling, kind of, it's a household thing or thing in Wisconsin. If your kid goes up for the basketball team, they're sinning almost in that respect. So, moving to Coleman, obviously your grandpa was a PE teacher. Would go on to UW Madison and do what he did there, and then obviously went on to be an NFL player as well. So, what kind of impact did that have as far as kind of the wrestling legacy that you built at Coleman?
Sure. So, I think with a lot of kids growing up, they definitely have a lot of influences from their parents, and I think Josh and I definitely had the blessing of having our grandparents. In terms of athletics, our grandpa specifically. So when you've been in our basement before, and you can see all the awards and stuff that my grandpa achieved when he was in high school and college, where he's ultimately in the George Martin Wrestling Hall of Fame. And so seeing pictures of him when he was my age now, getting his hand raised, winning the Big Ten, second place in the NCAA's Division I, and just knowing, for example, that he played in the NFL, definitely was a motivational factor to, by the time I was old enough to understand that, seventh, eighth grade, was definitely a motivational factor to really pursue athletics in a serious manner. So I think definitely, and also the fact that he really pushed us in a good way to do our best. And like I was mentioning before, I did not win many matches when I was growing up in wrestling, but he was at every single wrestling match, So just knowing that, and by the time I was old enough to understand that, was definitely, a big push for me to take it serious.
Yeah, so then you dived into how basically wrestling wasn't the second you started it, you didn't have immediate success. So by the time you do end up building up the high school, did you pretty much have like a routine, something informed to where obviously you've won a whole bunch of awards, and like Collins told me before off the air, like just the Coleman wrestling, like just in general, is usually very good, every single season. So do you think having that like mindset of knowing that you're good, or did you kind of just find out like during the season by beating some good kids?
I think that's a tough one because it kind of falls into both categories. I think one thing is the coaching staff, especially in the middle school, high school at Coleman, are really good coaches. Mr. Long in middle school, and then obviously the Caspers and Mr. Gould and all of those in the high school level. And, I'm not saying anything negative about O'Connell Falls. I think they had a really good wrestling program as well, good coaches. A lot of them knew my grandpa, especially in the high school level. But, in elementary school, I think I was more of a jack off than I was, I was running around trying to play Yu-Gi-Oh cards at wrestling meets and things like that. But at Coleman, it was something different. It was a lot more like serious, and, not in a bad way. They definitely took it, you go out there and you do your best. And I think that mentality switching from O'Connell Falls to Coleman, eventually rolled into something great. By the time I was in high school and I started winning some matches, I was wrestling heavyweight and I was only 200 pounds my freshman year. And I think that it may have helped in a way, because it's a lot slower paced at the heavyweight level, but I was quicker. I think just me being able to learn those styles of wrestling, eventually switching into the 220-pound weight class, where when I was wrestling heavyweight, I probably gained a lot more strength, just having to deal with people 80 pounds bigger than I was. And I think that probably played a good factor in why I won as many matches as I did.
Yeah, so kind of moving into high school here, like you had mentioned, freshman year, you're about 200 pounds wrestling at heavyweight, giving up about 80 pounds and still being good at it. Did you qualify your freshman year for state?
No, I did not. I could have, and I actually had a bet with the Mergeners, that if I qualified to state, they owed me a steak dinner, and if I did not qualify to state, we owed them a steak dinner. At regionals, I was wrestling this kid with like a 500 record, and he caught me in a throw and he pinned me. Granted, it was really hard my freshman year giving up that much weight. You know, if I got caught in a throw, I was basically done. You know, so of course we had to bring the Mergeners over to our house and give them a steak dinner. But
So kind of moving into sophomore year, it's where, I mean, kind of really yourself and just kind of our group, we kind of hit our growth spurt. That was kind of where athletics took off for us. Freshman year, I was rolling around on the mat with Richie Geimer, and then from sophomore year on, I was your wrestling partner, being 2 or 3 weight classes below you. So kind of going into that, I guess in the wrestling room, how did that play a factor into where you were wrestling guys who were 50 to 80 pounds heavier than you, but in practices you were rolling around on the mat with a guy who was 20, 30 pounds less than you? What was that like, having to change your play style, your wrestling style, your mentality, having a spectrum of really 100-pound difference of guys that you're wrestling with in the wrestling room and on the mat?
Sure. So I think I have my grandpa trying to call me. Speaking of Roger, I honestly think wrestling you in practice really helped me out in the long run. I mean, you know the saying, you're only as good as your partner, and I genuinely mean that, especially with you. You allowed me to have someone more similar to my size that I could actually practice moves with. You know, when I got on the mat with the heavyweights, you know, I had a certain wrestling style that I had to wrestle when I was in those matches, but but wrestling you in practice, I was able to, you know those moves a lot more, you know, effectively. And I do think that played a good role in the success at heavyweight, but even more so when I moved over to 220, when I was winning even more matches, because now I got to change my wrestling style where it matched what I was doing in practice.
Yeah, that seems like not having that many guys at your high school in general at Coleman, like Collin was saying, you having to basically practice with somebody who's 30, 40, 50 pounds less than you, and then you're having to show up to a meet and you're wrestling a guy 80 pounds heavier than you. That's got to be very difficult to do, just to get your mind right for, especially especially in high school too, when you're growing and stuff like that too. You're still getting stronger and all that stuff too. So it's like, oh my God, I got to get my ass, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm sure as the story, like, as we're going to find out here, you ended up making it through college here. So when did the offers start coming in, or was that your only offer to go to Superior? Or
So I kind of have a spider web of things here. I never really got an official offer. Northern Michigan was kind of talking to me about football, and they kind of had some money on the table. I know you mentioned this with my brother. I was watching that yesterday, that interview. I think our football program really kind of caused me not to actually get an official offer from Northern Michigan. And what they were talking to me about is the fact that I didn't have enough stats. I didn't have enough catches. I was a tight end, so I didn't have enough catches. So they didn't have enough to go off of, and they had other receivers more local that were similar to me in athletic ability, but they had the numbers
and the film. Yep.
And another thing that got brought up was Northern Iowa. My brother and I and my grandparents took a trip out there. They were offering an incentive program. So, I don't get any guaranteed money coming in, but if I come in there and I work hard and I start throwing certain marks, this is for track and field. If I start hitting certain marks, they might start, giving me money. So it's basically just come walk on to us and maybe we can see something in the future. And then another thing that got brought up was the Air Force Academy in Colorado. I was thinking about going out there to play football. I got accepted to the academy there. It was more of a last minute decision where I kind of backed out. I was like, I wasn't too sure about the military, because it was 4 years of college and 4 years of, service. and my grandma had a friend that knew about UW Superior. We just decided, let's go take a trip out there, and driving into the town. So I don't know if either of you two ever been into Superior.
Oh
but
yeah, I've been there plenty of times. My best friend's dad actually, he graduated from Superior back in the day with he was good buddies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He also
Okay,
graduated from there too. And yeah, I'm just familiar with the hockey facilities basically.
Okay. Yeah. So if you remember anyway, coming in on the east side on US 2, when you're driving into Superior, you kind of think, especially if you're someone who's going there for a college visit, you kind of think like, what am I doing in this place? You don't, you eventually you learn to respect that, what it looks like there, and you really learn to appreciate it. But at first glance, it's kind of an older industrial, the docks and all that stuff that just, and eventually once you get into the campus, and then is when you really see Superior, I think in its full glory there. And eventually learning about the area, where we have Wisconsin Point, one of the, I believe it's like the world's longest freshwater sandbar. I know it's something along those lines. And we have the waterfall in Patterson State Park just south. It's the tallest waterfall in the state. You start to learn a lot about, especially due to the fact that I was an environmental science major, I really grew to appreciate a lot of what the natural resources around us had to offer. And not only that, the head coach there, Glenn Drexler, is one of the greatest guys I know. He really did a lot to talk me into coming there, and I don't regret it at all. Yeah.
So you briefly mentioned the name Arnold Schwarzenegger, and people were like, "Oh, that's a pretty big name for to be going to a college like that." And there's rumors I've always heard, and I don't know if we briefly talked about it before, but given that you went there and you probably know a lot more, there's rumors that back in the 80s, I think is when Schwarzenegger attended UW Superior. He was looking for a university to attend. And given that he's from Austria, so his English wasn't the greatest at the time, whatever it would have been, he saw UW Superior. So he's like, oh, Superior, the best college. It's superior over all the others. And that's why he went there. Is that just a rumor, or is that actually a confirmed story as to why he decided to go to UW Superior?
Yeah, so it's probably a rumor. However, it is historical fact in Superior. That's how we talk about it up there. Yeah, I've definitely heard that story many times. I've probably even told that story many times. But
Yeah, and then on the other side of that, like what I know from like my best friend's buddy going to college, my best friend's buddy's dad going to college with him, he just said that he liked the small community part because he was trying. That's when he was working on all his movies. He was flying out places every weekend doing films and all this stuff, and he just like the small school. I feel like is really because how famous of a person he is now. He kind of enjoyed that being that smaller knitted community of because UW Superior is a beautiful place. It's beautiful up there, and I don't know. I've never been to like on campus, but I'd imagine the university there is really tight knit.
hmm yeah, I mean, there's not many people there at all when you compare it to schools like Oshkosh or La Crosse or Madison or Milwaukee. Um, I you tend to start seeing the same people every day, and you get to know a lot of people very well. I mean, some track teams, they don't even know everybody's name on the track team alone. However, at UW Superior, I knew people on every sport, men and women, and I think that it kind of goes to testify to what you were just saying, especially with that the tight knit small area. There's a lot of stories about Arnold Schwarzenegger up there. Working construction and all that stuff. But we have a couple pictures in our wellness center with him in there.
So freshman year, you show up coming out of Coleman, Wisconsin, we literally could have went to UW Marinette, and it would have been kind of a culture shock going from an 800
Oh, yeah.
person town to 10,000 people at a 2-year college. So it's freshman year, first couple weeks. track seasons kind of get started right away, honestly, as far as meetings and stuff like that. So, like you said, you ended up being a walk-on with Superior, but then obviously you go on to do great things there. So, kind of walk us through the early stages of showing up to campus and getting involved with that.
Yeah, so lucky me, I got a single dorm room all 5 years I was at UWS, which had its pros and cons. One of the cons I would say is my freshman year specifically was it didn't give me that initial connection with anybody on campus. So I was pretty much a lone wolf from the get-go. My grandparents and my brother helped me move in, and once they left, I was there. I think the first meetings we had for track were about 2 weeks or 3 weeks into the school year in the fall, and during those 2 or 3 weeks, I would just go to class, come back to my dorm, go to class, and and so on. What was it? And I remember the first day of those meetings, I knew some of the guys on the track team because they helped me move in, and I did my tour with a few of them when I was initially coming to do that. And there was one guy in particular, he was also a freshman that year. His name is Foston. And right from the get-go, him and I kind of connected and, became pretty good friends that year, and grew on to be really, really good friends. Recent times, he's from the Duluth area. So that alone allowed me to, start getting those connections and meeting people. It was tough from the beginning. It really was, it wasn't like, my brother or like you with Luke, I believe his name was.
Oh yeah, the first roommate that I had. Yeah.
Right. You get to know these people right off the bat. And I mean, that definitely has its pros in that regards. But I'm glad I had a single dorm all 5 years. By the time I was, a fourth and fifth year senior, it was nice just to go back to my dorm, shut the lights off when I want them off, turn them on when I want them on.
Have the ladies over and not have to worry about putting a sock on the door.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, diving into the first interactions with the track team, stuff like that. First practices, interim meetings, or what were those called? Basically, where you had to meet against your own teammates, where you mark stuff. I can't remember what those are called. Yeah, kind of dive into that, how that started for you.
Yeah, so at UW Superior, I don't know how Oshkosh was, but at Superior, we the first several weeks, actually the first few months, was just a conditioning course. It's basically an excuse to get the track team together and get the coaches with the track team. And so with that was another benefit to that, was getting to know the people on the track team. And a couple months into school, we'd start actually doing track and field stuff. And as a freshman, it is boring. You're doing a lot of just spinning in a circle with a stick in your hand, a chair. It's a lot of just drills and drills. I mean, you don't even pick up an implement for a couple weeks into the track season. And by the time we start picking up stuff, with weight throw, actually, I didn't pick it up right away. I don't think many freshmen really do. It's tough. It's something brand new to us. It's 35 pounds. It's heavy, and it beats you up pretty bad. Though I did have the luxury of having a couple really good throwers on our team at the time. One of them is Thomas Udenberg, who actually ended up being a national qualifier in the shot put. And Tony Willett was another one who really coached me and my friend Foston. Foston was also a national qualifier in the hammer throw, and Tony was a screw record holder in the hammer throw. He was really close a couple years qualifying to nationals in hammer. So getting to know these guys, it really took me and Foston under their wings. Really benefited us. We had a really great track team, really great connections, a lot of good athletes, but also a lot of just good people.
So you're talking about weight throw again. You briefly mentioned it at the beginning. It's basically a 35-pound ball on a 6-inch chain, and you had mentioned it beats you up pretty good. I I could attest to that. I gave myself a concussion with it once because there's two different ways you can do it where you just go side to side with it to get your rotation going. And some people you get it over your head and going. Well, I started with the over the head technique and I whacked myself in the side of the head with it, fell and then hit my head on the ring as well. So I ended up giving myself a concussion, didn't throw for a couple of weeks. Luckily it was still preseason, but yeah, for those who I guess don't know, well, I mean, even jumping from high school into college, we knew what weight throw, hammer throw was in high school, but obviously it wasn't an event in high school. So what was that like learning a new event, um, especially with the amount of weight that you had to throw around with it?
Mm. Uh, so my freshman year, I was also doing the over the head technique, though I did quickly transition into doing hip bounce. So you just bounce it off your hip and go. That, I could say it a million times, it beats you up. I can still feel it today in my shoulders. I probably feel 10 years older than I am. And it's a high learning curve. It really is. There's a reason why it's a senior heavy event. Coming from your freshman year, you come from high school, you've never touched these implements in your life, at least, from where we're from. And, so as a freshman, if you're throwing, 10 meters, that's probably pretty good, at least in the Division III level. Like I said, I had some good coaches and teammates that really took me under their wing, and I was throwing 16 and a half my freshman year. And by that time is when I knew. So when I came into college originally, I was like, shot put's my thing. I was a 4-time medalist in high school in shot put. I was pretty okay at that. And that's what a lot of, when I had those people or coaches from other schools talking to me about track, it was for shot put because they saw what I could do with that. And, by the time I hit 16, I think it was like 16.6 meters my freshman year, I knew that this was something I enjoyed doing. And as much as it hurt doing for the next 4 years, I love doing it,
So talking about competing here at UW Superior, what were some of your favorite facilities that you got to compete in?
Well, I would say the most memorable to me, I don't remember the name of the facility or the college we were at specifically, but my junior season, which was my 4th year in college for indoor, at nationals was in Boston. And the reason why this was the most memorable for me was that the track was actually it was curved inward. So if you're running in the side, you're actually kind of like angled in. And so it was almost like a big bowl. And that was my first official, like, high level competition. And I would say that's probably if I had to give a favorite one, that might've been it. I think this past spring, we can talk about this too, what happened to me last spring, with coronavirus and stuff, how they canceled nationals and whatnot. But that would have been another highlight, that facility in North Carolina.
Do you get, I know all senior athletes got that 1 year extended. Does that go through track and field as well? Like, would you have had the opportunity if you wanted to throw one more season? Could you have?
No. The reason why is I took my 3rd year of college. I didn't do indoor season that year, but I did outdoor season.
So
for
counts.
So for my 4th year college, when I did indoor and outdoor, I was using my junior indoor eligibility and my senior outdoor. So coming into last year, which was my 5th year, I was just indoor. And when they canceled nationals, they only extended eligibility back for the outdoor season, not for the indoor. So I maybe would have gone back and competed, because I was so close to being a national champion. I think I probably would have gone back.
You have to, if you're that close, dude. If you're that close, you have to go for it. You know
Sure.
what I mean? You've dedicated so much of your life to get that close to it.
Yep.
So just kind of sticking with college here, the the division that you mentioned, schools like Superior, La Crosse, Oshkosh, all were in the WIAC, the WIAC, arguably one of the most prestigious D3 conferences, really across the board. Whitewater in football, lacrosse and track. What was it like? Basically, the conference championship stuff like that. I know, what was it, junior or senior year? Superior actually left the WIAC, I want to say, correct? Or
Our junior senior year of high school.
no, of college, because then you guys
Uh,
moved to the UMAC eventually.
our freshman year was the first year in the UMAC. So our
Oh,
senior
okay.
year of high school was the last year they were in the WIAC. So
Oh, okay.
I was in the UMAC all 5 years.
Okay. But still, there was a handful of meets, or a couple meets. I remember we crossed paths at, and I always look forward to those. I think was it lacrosse was one of them?
Yep,
I
the
remember it
outdoor
was
lacrosse.
outdoor lacrosse meet. Um, I think that was it. It was like twice we met at that. It might have been, but obviously being real, even though you're in the UMAC, you probably still saw a lot of like Wisconsin schools at those meets. So for a lot of other schools really across the country, the only time that they really have top line competition is if they make it to nationals. So what was that like, being at these meets constantly competing against the people that, instead of going to nationals and competing against people you've never seen before, it's all the same people you've been competing with all year?
Yeah, so the UMAC was interesting. There wasn't, and I don't want to talk negative about too many of the schools. I think there was a lot of good schools, academically wise, but in terms of athletics, there were some struggling schools, and at least in track and field. It was, I enjoyed competing against a lot of those schools. The reason why is because I saw a lot of what Superior was before leaving the WIAC. I know there's all the jokes. I've heard many of them myself, even from people in WIAC schools. Superior did not look very good in the WIAC. When we moved over to the UMAC, we won conference every year in indoor and outdoor. And we had some close calls with St. Scholastica in Duluth. But the nice thing about the UMAC was just the people in general. They're just fun people to throw with. Regardless of how good or bad you were, everyone joked around. We had just had a good time. And that's more of what the UMAC was about. Obviously, the WIAC is, probably arguably the most prestigious D3 program or conference in the nation. And, so if you're going to college, to do track and field, or not just track, but any kind of sport, and you're really dedicated on being serious about it, and that's your main drive to go to college, and sure, go to the WIAC. For me, that, I loved athletics, but I wanted the academic side of it. I wanted the people side of it. And that was one of the benefits of the UMAC conference. And a lot of the track meets we went to were actually in Minnesota. Most of the meets we went to were down, in the Twin Cities. Some of them are just in Duluth. We get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd wake up at 9, I'd be throwing at 10. And, that was one of the benefits of that. We did throw against some tougher competition. We go to the WIAC conference, stuff, which I did like those as well, because you get to finally see, what I'm going to be throwing against, at nationals and things like that. So basically, the national tournament in Division 3 is just the WIAC conference meet. But yeah.
So if track didn't work out the way that it did for you, do you think that you would have pursued football?
Probably. So UW Superior doesn't have a football team.
Right.
And that's probably a good thing for them, because I probably would have played football over track and field from the get-go, just coming out of high school. I did enjoy football just because it is that team aspect of it, but you're like with the people on the field. Track and field has a team aspect to it, but it's more felt in football, I believe. That's why I was looking at Northern Michigan as hard as I was. I know Collin and I went to a couple of games up, in the Superior Dome, And yeah, just watching those games is, in the dome was something like, yeah, I really wanted to do. It didn't work out for me. And then, I don't regret making the decisions I made.
So given that, like you said, UW Superior didn't have a football team, you said NMU was looking at you. I know a lot of people, especially when athletics come into the picture, you have a list of colleges. If, say, you just were terrible at track or whatever, that was off the table. What other colleges were you interested in looking at aside from those two?
Sure. If I step away from athletics for a minute and I just look at the academic side of it, Eau Claire was another one I was looking at. The thing about Eau Claire, though, is at the time they required 2 semesters of Spanish to be accepted, and they changed that now, I believe. But I only had 1 semester, and that's when Jake Freival and I took Spanish our senior year with 30 other freshman girls. And so that didn't ultimately work out. We probably could have pulled strings and got me into there, but it really wasn't worth the hassle. And other than that, I did try to I almost did transfer to Oshkosh my sophomore year.
Oh yeah, I remember that when I was still there. I was harping you to come transfer to Oshkosh.
Yeah, I almost pulled the trigger on that, but ultimately I made the decision to stay. If, a lot of the times people will look back and say like, well, I could have went to this college or that college, but I almost want to say that I would have chose Superior every time. I'm almost tempted to say that. I really, I want to take you up there sometime. I really want to show you that because you'll understand why I really fell in love with that place.
Yeah. I've never been up in the area, which is funny because currently living in Eau Claire, I'm closer to Superior than I ever was, but even still, it's like over a 2-hour drive from here yet. So it's just like this place is just up in the middle of not in the middle of nowhere, up in the farthest corner of a kind of like how Milwaukee's in the southeast corner. Superior is basically the farthest city you can get away from Milwaukee. I look forward to getting up in the area sometime. I know like the Apostle Islands, all that kind of stuff up there too. It's just a lot of enjoying the outdoors and that kind of stuff. It's just an area that if you appreciate the outdoors and the environment and all that kind of stuff, it's definitely a place to be.
Sure.
Yeah, and even the drive to Duluth too. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That drive coming into Duluth, like it's so beautiful up there. It's like almost like you're living on the ocean, kind of, but you have winter. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it is that beautiful up there. Yeah. I loved that was always one of my favorite things as a kid was all the hockey tournaments that we had in the summer up in Duluth. We'd go camp and hang out around the Superior area and all that stuff. And yeah, it's really beautiful up there. Yeah. Just the water was a little warmer.
Yeah, because when you're driving into Duluth, you're driving over the bridge, and you're basically just looking at the side of a mountain, and the city is just right there on the side of that hill. And Superior has its negatives. One of the joke is that the best thing about Superior is that you can see Duluth across the bridge. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Duluth is beautiful, especially when you hit the North Shore and you go up further north. I don't know if you've been up there before. Split Rock Lighthouse, and there's waterfalls up there.
I can't say.
Yeah, well, it's worth a trip.
Is Northland College is right up there, isn't it as well?
No, I don't think so. I think Northland is that Michigan, isn't it?
No, I think that's by Superior. Ashland, maybe.
Maybe it's in Ashland.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. We have a few colleges. There's a tech school down the road from Superior, and then in Duluth there's Lake Superior College, and then there's St. Scholastica, University of Minnesota Duluth. I actually took some classes at Lake Superior College during the summer once, but I'm not sure what Northland is. I don't know if I know I've heard of it, but I don't know if I know.
That's where my best friend went to college, and for some reason I thought it was in Superior too, but I think it's in Ashland.
Maybe.
So, kind of switching gears here, finishing up, and we'll let you go here. NFL draft is this week. I keep peeking at that gaudy Rams blanket on your couch in the background. I don't know if you've been I'm sure you've been following kind of the Rams situation there. What would you like to see the Rams do this year with the draft?
Yeah, they don't have many options. They kind of got rid of a lot of their better picks. But I think they really made up for it in the free agency. I'm excited about the Matthew Stafford trade. I was a fan of Jared Goff, but I think I think he was about right now as good as he's ever going to get. Obviously he's a really good player. He throws really good football, and maybe he can do some good things with the Lions. But I'm definitely more excited about Matthew Stafford. I was a little nervous at first because he's an older guy. He doesn't really have much playoff success. But then again, the team he's been around has kind of been the reason why, I'd say.
And the dude's an Iron Man. He plays with broken ribs, broken hands,
Yeah.
sprained ankles, everything.
Yeah. I think if I remember right, Andrew Whitworth is playing one more year. And so I think our offensive line is going to be pretty okay. I think we have Cam Akers, running back. He's pretty good. Our defense obviously is phenomenal. I'm excited to see what this year has to bring. I don't think they really have to do much during the draft. Maybe because we just signed I can't remember the name of the receiver, Deshaun Jackson.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We just signed him. So I think, him, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. I think we got, next year's Tampa Bay.
I mean, I've even heard some rumors. Antonio Brown.
I haven't heard that, but I would be okay
I've heard
with that.
him now too. I've heard Chiefs, Seattle. I've heard there's a lot of teams who've offered him a pretty penny to come play there.
Yeah.
And people are just saying he's waiting until after the draft to see where he's going to get the most playing time, I think.
Yeah. I do wish though the Rams waited a little bit and tried making an offer for Russell Wilson, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, Russell Wilson. I think they should have waited a little bit for that. No, I'm not complaining about Matthew Stafford. I think that's a good pickup.
Yeah, but they ain't going to trade him in the division.
Yeah, probably not.
With how close that NFC West is, that Russell Wilson switching teams definitely gives you an advantage. But yeah, Austin, if you had any more questions for him before you let him go here.
No, I don't. I was trying to think if I had anything here, but I think we kind of went over everything that we had here for him.
Yeah. If you guys have anything, I'll probably try to get my friend Joe on here and I'll come on too. So
yeah, for sure.
Then.
Yeah, we definitely love to have you on again sometime. I know kind of as we grow our channel and all that good stuff that we'll definitely look at having guys that we've had on before, even like give insider news on, like, obviously you follow the Rams, so if you got something to say about the Rams, it's like, oh, what's CJ, what do you got for us about the Rams today, stuff like that. So yeah, obviously the guys we've had on, we've all kind of, Austin and I have grown up with and build good relationships with over the years. So yeah, we definitely look forward to having everybody back on again at some point.
For sure.
All right, man. Well, you take care. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks again for coming on.
Take care, guys.